When the car came crashing, my fiancé instinctively shielded the girl in the back seat, heading towards the impact from my position in the passenger seat. When the rescue team arrived, he requested to save her first. Her hand was stuck, she was an artist, and if her hand was ruined, she would be too. Meanwhile, steel rods pierced through my clavicle, blood draining rapidly. In my final moments of consciousness, a nurse anxiously searched for my family to sign some paperwork, while Adrien gently comforted Elena with a broken wrist. As the nurse handed him the pen, he furrowed his brow. I'm not her family. Later, I managed to break up with him as I wished, but he came running back, almost crazed, telling me, "We are getting married, I swear I will only be good to you from now on." Chapter 1. It had been 6 months since I was discharged. Adrien, who always cared about appearances, came to pick me up looking haggard. He said, "You're discharged just in time. These days Elena is moving, and you can help too." I hesitated and told him, "I can't lift heavy things now, I need to rest." As if he hadn't heard me, he said, "I didn't ask you to move things, just see what you can do." I hadn't even been home yet before he took me straight to Elena's new home, right next to his. When Elena saw me, her expression turned sour for a moment, but quickly changed to a surprised look. "Claire, you're discharged?" I was wondering why Adrien left in such a rush with the food half-cooked. "You've come just in time, come, let me show you around my house." She enthusiastically introduced me to the decor and layout of her home. When she opened the closet, I immediately saw Adrien's clothes hanging on half of the wall. She quickly closed the door, looking flustered, and awkwardly tried to change the subject, "Claire." I wasn't interested in watching her poor performance. "I'll go to the kitchen to see if there's anywhere I can help." Adrien was in the kitchen with a few friends, wearing a pink bunny apron, skillfully stir-frying in the pot, while the other two were assisting. They were all pampered young masters, with intimidating titles under their family businesses. I remember 6 months ago, Adrien couldn't even find the hood switch. It turns out no matter how grand the title, in the face of love, you have to get your hands dirty. They chatted casually. "It's all thanks to Elena, she's got Adrien wrapped around her finger. She's turned him into a top chef." "Claire, you've never tasted her cooking, have you?" "What are you saying about Claire? She's just Adrien's simp, she doesn't deserve to taste it." "It's pretty pathetic, really. Adrien treats her like this, and she's still here, making Elena have no status." Adrien just smiled and didn't participate in the criticism, nor did he explain. I had been with Adrien for 3 years, during which he had mentioned breaking up countless times, but I never agreed, which made his friends even more arrogant than him. Of course, it was my fault. Besides being Adrien's fiancé, I was also his company's chief secretary. People looked down on me. After all, the relationship between a female secretary and a CEO was always a bit murky, but between Adrien and me, it was crystal clear, a contractual relationship. 5 years. I fended off admirers for him, he gave me money, both of us taking what we needed. I didn't agree to break up because if I terminate the contract early, I won't receive the expected amount. Chapter 2. Not long after I was discharged, there was an important collaboration project at the company. When I called Adrien for a meeting, he was withdrawing his hand from Elena's head resting on his desk, asleep. Elena is 22 years old. From a certain angle, she resembles me when I was 22. The tenderness in Adrien's eyes hadn't dissipated yet, but when he turned to me, that tenderness turned into displeasure. Lately, he had been frequently dissatisfied with me. "Let's talk outside." He deliberately lowered his voice, as if afraid of waking her up. Half an hour into the meeting, he was physically present but seemed distracted. Midway through, he received a call from Elena. I was sitting beside him, and the voice from the other end was clearly audible. "Adrien, it's raining outside, and I can't get a cab." Adrien was about to get up when I held his hand. "CEO Adrien, this meeting is crucial. This collaboration took me half a year to set up, and I valued it greatly." He sat back down, but his brows remained furrowed. When he was passing a proposal to the marketing department, his phone rang again. Glancing at it, he instructed me. The decision for this collaboration lies with you." After saying that, he stood up. I subconsciously grabbed his sleeve. "CEO Adrien." He quickly avoided my hand, looking at me coldly, and said, "I have urgent matters to attend to, give me the car keys." After he left, everyone's gaze shifted to me. I pretended not to notice their curiosity and carried on as if nothing had happened. Let's continue. As I left the company, it was pouring rain, and I couldn't find a cab. I had to call Adrien. It took a while for the call to connect. His voice was slightly out of breath. "What's wrong?" I hesitated for a moment, then honestly said, "It's raining too heavily, and I can't find." He interrupted. "Claire, I'm busy. You can call the driver directly." With that, he sharply inhaled, and the call was abruptly ended. I knew that tone, and I knew he was busy with Elena now. Lost in thought, a gray sedan stopped in front of me. The man in the driver's seat turned slightly towards me. "Get in." Seeing him, my heart skipped a beat. At the same time, Adrien's driver also hurried over, holding an umbrella as he got out of the car. "Claire, CEO Adrien asked me to pick you up." Glancing at Evan, who was smirking and preparing to leave, I politely declined the driver. "Thank you, I'll ride with CEO Evan." Evan raised an eyebrow in surprise. Evan and Adrien are cousins, with average feelings towards each other, but due to their blood relation, they had to interact. The rain was too heavy, visibility was poor, and what was usually a half-hour journey took Evan an hour. When we reached the entrance of my building, the rain mysteriously stopped, and the atmosphere in the car turned silent. I politely thanked him and asked, "You're back? Are you leaving again this time?" He suddenly glanced behind me, and following his gaze, I saw Adrien leaning against the car smoking, with a dark and mysterious expression. After Evan left, he grabbed my arm and roughly pulled me towards the building. I snapped back at him. "Adrien, have you lost your mind?" Through gritted teeth, he said, "Claire, don't forget that I'm your man." Chapter 3. Elena's place was not close to mine, and I wondered how fast he drove in this weather to get here. I didn't invite him inside, just said, "There's nothing, you can go back." It was the first time I spoke to him in such a cold tone, and he didn't move for a while. When he finally spoke, his tone softened. "Claire, can we stop fighting all the time? It's a holiday the day after tomorrow, how about I take you out to relax?" I just wanted him to leave quickly, so I agreed directly. We didn't contact each other all day the next day. On the third day, as I was going downstairs with some stuff, his car was already parked by the roadside. He came over to help with the things, and I naturally went to open the passenger door. But the passenger window suddenly rolled down, revealing Elena's innocent face. She said, "Claire, I feel dizzy in the back, can I sit in the front seat?" I was taken aback and looked back at Adrien, who calmly said, "Let her sit in the front, she's young, take care of her." I nodded, "Okay." Adrien slightly furrowed his brows, pursed his lips into a thin line, looking almost angry. This road trip had 3 cars in total, with Adrien's car in the middle and 2 guys I hadn't met before in the back. They were quite talkative, and we quickly got along. Elena in the front passenger seat also joined in, saying, "I'm so jealous of Claire, she can make friends quickly with anyone." Adrien's face seemed to darken even more. Occasionally, he would glance at the back through the rearview mirror, and a few times our eyes met. Each time, his expression grew a bit more somber. The lead car was driving fast, and Adrien couldn't catch up. When we were stuck at a traffic light, he suddenly hit the steering wheel hard, looking visibly agitated. I ignored him and continued talking to the guy next to me. Just as I was about to exchange WeChat contacts, Adrien slammed on the brakes, stopping the car in the middle of the road. The car behind couldn't avoid it and hit his rear end. He didn't show any intention of checking the car, just turned to me with an icy look, saying, "Claire, are you crazy? How can I drive when you're speaking so loudly?" It was indeed a bit unreasonable of me. The 2 guys quickly tried to defuse the situation. Adrien, why don't you go down and check how bad the car is? Elena chimed in. Yes, Adrien, go check how bad the car is first. Adrien sat there unmoving, just stared at me coldly. Get out of the car. Seeing my lack of response, he impatiently furrowed his brows. Claire, get out, go sit in someone else's car. Elena glanced back at me, a hint of schadenfreude in her eyes. I felt quite awkward in this situation, but just as I got out of the car, I happened to see Evan's car parked nearby. Adrien sounded surprised. Bro? What are you doing here? Evan grumbled. Wasn't this a self-driving trip? Why are we dragging our feet? As he gestured for me to come over, I was about to go when Adrien suddenly ran out of the car and grabbed my arm. Sorry, Claire, I was rude earlier. Get in the car. Chapter 4. Perhaps sensing Adrien's bad mood, Elena remained silent the entire journey. By the time we reached our destination, it was already night. When we were assigning rooms, Elena linked her arm with mine. Since it's just the two of us girls, let's share a room. We agreed to wake up in the middle of the night to hike up the mountain to watch the sunrise. After a short nap, I woke up to find Elena gone from the room. Checking the group chat, I discovered that a group had already gone up, including Adrien and Elena. Adrien's buddies had intentionally posted a photo of him carrying Elena on his back. The leading lady quickly clarified in the group chat. Brothers, don't talk nonsense. Claire might misunderstand. I sprained my foot. I chuckled, changed into more casual clothes, and as I opened the door, I collided head-on with Evan coming out from the opposite side. I lowered my eyes and walked downstairs, with him not too far behind. I never told anyone about my relationship with Evan. He was Adrien's cousin, my high school classmate, and my ex-boyfriend. Our breakup was quite commonplace. His mother offered me money, and I happened to need it. Because of me, he cut ties with his family, but shortly after I took the money and broke up with him, his mother fell seriously ill, and they traveled abroad for treatment. Since then, I had no news of him. Fortunately, his mother didn't think highly of me and never mentioned me, so 4 years ago, I was able to appear smoothly by Adrien's side. I quickened my pace, but still couldn't shake off the person behind me. At that moment, there were only the two of us climbing up the mountain. When we were halfway up, it suddenly started raining, so we had to seek shelter in a nearby pavilion. Leaning against the railing, he lit a cigarette and quietly watched the rain pouring down. He asked me, "Have you been doing well these years?" I replied, He sneered, crushed the cigarette butt, and said, "I haven't been doing too well." I remained silent, and suddenly, he leaned in closer, his warm breath sending shivers down my spine. "Claire, you have to come to hell with me. What are you two talking about? Everyone's waiting for you upstairs." As I turned around, I saw Adrien standing in the rain holding an umbrella, his eyes colder than the wind. Without waiting for me to speak, he forcefully pulled me to his side, his grip on my wrist like a vice, causing me to furrow my brows slightly. He handed Evan an umbrella. "Bro, you take this one. The rain has eased up, let's quickly go up to meet them." Throughout the journey, he maintained a stern expression, and I didn't speak either. Eventually, he let go of my hand and instead wrapped his arm around my waist. Unaccustomed to such intimacy with him, I reminded him, "CEO Adrien." He glared at me fiercely, his voice low. "Shut up." As we passed by a restroom, he dragged me inside, and as soon as we entered, he leaned down to kiss me. Instinctively, I turned my head to avoid the kiss. This action clearly provoked him. He firmly gripped my jaw, forcing me to look into his eyes. "Claire, do you despise me?" I don't say a word, but his emotions become even more agitated. He said, "Do you know how ugly you looked standing next to my brother just now?" "What? Now you want to get close to my brother again?" "He doesn't like you, so give up on that idea." Since we were out to have fun, I didn't want to argue with him. As I tried to walk away, he grabbed my arm tightly. I suddenly felt annoyed, shook off his hand, and said, "Adrien, you've gone too far." He sneered in anger. "Too far? If you despise me that much, then let's break up. I couldn't even count how many times he had used this line before. As usual, I didn't leave, I just turned back to look at him. He stared at me intently, appearing somewhat nervous, but that nervousness dissipated once I met his gaze. He reached out his hand to me. So, if you don't want to break up, then. I interrupted him. Fine, let's break up. Chapter 5. Adrien was clearly taken aback, as if he didn't expect me to agree to this. I turned and pushed the door, only to see Evan stumble a bit as he was about to enter, likely because he was caught off guard by my abrupt movement. I sincerely apologized to him, sorry. He glanced at me, didn't say anything, handed me the umbrella, and walked away. I followed behind him, noticing that he would slow down his pace every now and then, waiting for me to catch up before continuing. By the time we reunited with everyone, it had already been an hour. It took a while for Adrien to catch up, exuding a hostile aura. Seeing Evan and me standing together, he grabbed my hand and started walking downhill. I didn't particularly enjoy making a scene, so I didn't resist. Evan, who had been chatting with friends with his back to me, suddenly turned around, saying, "Weren't we here to watch the sunrise?" Adrien was wary of this cousin. In that brief pause, Elena, who had been overlooked, also spoke up somewhat aggrieved. "Adrien, what's wrong with you?" Adrien glared at me, and when he finally spoke to Elena, his tone softened, "Nothing." Elena continued. "I heard that area is the best viewpoint. Adrien, will you accompany me to check it out?" Adrien didn't answer immediately. Elena then asked me, "Claire, can I borrow Adrien for a few minutes?" I smiled, sure. Adrien, however, looked like he wanted to strangle me. I didn't see the two of them until we were descending the mountain. When we finished packing up and were getting ready to head to the next location, they came back one after the other. Elena's lipstick had been reapplied, but it was a bit smudged, and there were traces of it below the waistband of Adrien's light-colored pants. I was truly disgusted by these two. After the road trip, I hadn't been in contact with Adrien, but I knew he spent most of his time helping Elena decorate their new house. I figured he had probably accepted the fact that our contract had ended, and felt relieved. That night, while working overtime on a project, I suddenly received a call from a collaborator. The conversation stuttered. "Secretary Claire, the main entity of our company has changed. We need to resign the contract. This collaboration is very important for my career planning, so I agreed without hesitation." The other person said, "In the future, if you have anything, just go directly to CEO Evan. He said he wants to personally oversee this project." Just as I finished the call, Evan's phone rang. "There are many things in this project that I need to see on site. In order to facilitate the collaboration as soon as possible, the next day I took him to the project department in the neighboring province. Evan is even more difficult to serve than Adrien. I can't afford to offend him now. Our rooms were on different floors. It was getting late. After completing the hotel check-in, I was about to return to my room. I politely bid him farewell. "I'll head back to the room first, tomorrow." He glanced at his luggage beside him, then turned and walked away. I had no choice but to help him bring his luggage back to the room. As soon as I stepped out, I coincidentally saw Elena and Adrien coming out hand in hand from the opposite direction. Adrien instinctively pulled his hand out of Elena's hand, was about to speak, then saw Evan behind me, his expression immediately twisted. "Claire? Are you avoiding me?" I reminded him with a smile. "We've already broken up," he said. "We haven't broken up, I was just joking." Evan behind me interjected. "Oh, but both she and I took it seriously." Adrien visibly became agitated. He rushed over to pull me, but was blocked by Evan. Evan said, "Go inside, lock the door." Adrien's eyes were bloodshot with anger. He said, "Claire, come out, I'll get you another room." The rest of his words were cut off by the door. I sat in the room waiting for Evan. Not long after, I heard another phone ring. This phone had only one contact, Elena. She said, "Sister, I followed your advice, they really broke up." I didn't respond. Elena naturally didn't know that her trusted advisor was me, and Adrien didn't know that his so-called true love was brought out by me. Chapter 6. Evan still hadn't returned until late. He just called to tell me not to wait for him. I took a shower and came out to see dozens of missed calls on my phone. The WeChat icon also showed 99 plus messages. I opened it and they were all from Adrien. He seemed to be going crazy, continuously sending me videos, hanging up and sending again, hanging up and sending again. Just as I was about to reply to him, another video call came in. It seemed like he didn't expect me to answer. Initially his expression was a bit fierce, but after seeing me, he quickly put on a gentle look. He tried to sound casual. "Why did you just answer?" I answered truthfully. "I just finished taking a shower." The smile at the corner of his mouth immediately froze. He asked, "Why did you take a shower? What do you want to do? Is Evan with you?" Before I could respond, he said, "I have something to take care of at home now. I've sent a driver to pick you up. Come downstairs in a while, got it? Don't stay there." I feel that his current state is not suitable for communication. Just as I heard a knock on the door, I said, "Adrien, I'm here for work, I'll hang up now." He must have also heard the knocking. His face instantly turned red. He said, "Don't open the door, Claire. I'm begging you, I'm really begging you, don't open the door, come back now, we'll go to the Civil Affairs Bureau early tomorrow to get our certificate. I will take good care of you in the future, okay, Claire? I'm begging you, I'm really begging you." I didn't say anything, I just hung up. The one knocking on the door was the room service I had called, but I had no obligation to explain to him. I also sent away his driver. Later that night, the company's HR manager contacted me, speaking hesitantly. "Secretary Claire, you are now suspected of stealing company secrets for Novatech Industries and need to come back to cooperate with the investigation." The situation escalated suddenly, and I left without even saying goodbye to Evan. Even though it was already early morning, Adrien and several company executives were still waiting for me. After a brief conversation, I realized this was all a setup by Adrien to force me back. They didn't have concrete evidence, but still suspended me from my position and made me withdraw from the collaboration with Evan. I looked coldly at Adrien following behind me. "Can you stop causing trouble?" This outcome was indeed different from what I had expected. As if he hadn't heard me speak, he said, "I've already brought the household register, it's almost dawn, we'll go get the certificate at dawn." During this time, his mental state seemed to be deteriorating. Now his beard was unkempt, his face showing bruises, most likely from the time when Evan hit him. Before I could speak, I saw Evan entering with another man from the doorway. His eyes had a faint shade of blue, probably also due to lack of rest. Seeing me looking at Evan, Adrien harshly grabbed my chin and turned my face back. "Claire, don't look at other men." The man next to Evan introduced himself. "I am the manager of the legal department at Novatech Industries. I am here this time to discuss with your company about the defamation caused by your company, resulting in damage to our reputation." Adrien frowned. "Defamation?" The man said. "Our company received recordings defaming our company's unfair competition. If your compensation does not meet our expectations, we will not rule out legal action." Adrien's face turned extremely ugly. He asked Evan, "Are you really going to be at odds with me?" Evan, who had been silent all along, seemed somewhat helpless. "Adrien, I'm not targeting you, but I can't ignore your sister-in-law's matter, can I?" Chapter 7. Due to Evan's intervention, Adrien did not continue causing trouble, but I ended up losing my job. Adrien fired me, and Elena replaced me. They say changing professions is like changing mountains. It's not easy for someone with an art background to switch to being a secretary. The day I went to handle my resignation procedures and ask Adrien for my money, Elena was also at the company, personally being guided by Adrien on her tasks. Upon seeing me, Elena ran over and grabbed my hand. "Claire, you're back, I'm really so dumb, I just can't learn, you're so amazing." Adrien sat in his chair without moving, looking like a stranger. I pulled my hand away. "I have something to discuss with CEO Adrien, you should leave first." She bit her lower lip, glanced back at Adrien, and said, "Adrien." Adrien forced a smile. "You should leave first." The office was just the two of us, I cut to the chase. "You are the one in breach of contract, remember to transfer the penalty to my account." Adrien lit a cigarette. "Claire, now that you're back, let's get married, I can transfer all my assets to your name." I said. "I haven't changed my account." His smile finally couldn't hold, he snapped the cigarette in half. "Claire, don't push me." I also smiled. "CEO Adrien, I've been here for so many years, I know some things about the company, and my patience only lasts for 3 days. Since breaking up with Evan, I've been keeping busy, and now being unemployed gives me a chance to take a break." I wasn't in a rush to find a job, but I registered as a substitute driver, taking up orders when I felt bored. One day, I located a client and arrived at a hotel, only to see Evan coming out with a group of people. He's someone who pays attention to his manners, usually elegant, but now standing among those people, he seemed out of place. He stood in the shadows of the night, our eyes suddenly locking. I hurriedly turned to get into my car. Unexpectedly, he walked towards me. The client, seeing him, was also surprised. "CEO Evan." Evan told him, "I'll have the driver take you." Facing Evan, I felt guilty. He wasn't someone who strayed from the norm, yet he had broken ties with his family for me, willing to do manual labor just to be with me. During that time, his palms were blistered from work, and he often had injuries on his body. Whenever I cried silently at night, he would turn over and hold me, comforting. "Wife, don't cry, this is temporary, I won't let you suffer with me, trust me." So when he said something about going to hell with him, I didn't believe it, he wouldn't do that to me. He had also been drinking that night, initially leaning back in his chair without a word. I didn't pay him any attention until we were close to his building. There was a hint of mockery in his tone as he said, "What? Did Adrien fire you?" I knew he was upset, so I didn't engage with him and just went along. "Yes, Evan, what should I do now? I'm in a really bad situation." He glanced at me. "You deserve it." I said. "Should I go to Novatech Industries then?" Evan sneered. "You're dreaming." The next morning, still asleep, I received a call from Novatech Industries, asking, "Claire, are you available for an interview?" Chapter 8. Word quickly spread about my new job at Novatech Industries. Evan didn't give me any particularly complicated tasks, just helping him with errands and serving tea. In his mind, this was already a huge insult. Everyone in the 3 generations knew about my past with Adrien, and soon, his friends who favored Elena started gossiping about me in the group chat. I didn't want to listen to their barking, so I simply left the group. As the workday was ending, Evan knocked on my desk. "Come with me to a banquet tonight." It turned out to be a family banquet. Evan's family and Adrien's family banquet. It was only then that I found out his parents had both passed away. I sat next to him, looking at his thin face, suddenly feeling a bit sorry for him. It turns out that when he said things weren't going well, it was really this bad. At the moment, he was talking with the elders, and I discreetly touched his hand. His words paused slightly, then he turned and held my hand, giving me a warning look. Adrien arrived at that moment, just him. Seeing our hands intertwined, he instantly clenched his teeth. Adrien's family didn't know about my relationship with Adrien. His mother was speaking to Evan at the time, saying, "All of that is in the past. Now that you also have a girlfriend, marry her sooner and settle down." Evan smiled and agreed. Adrien's expression stiffened as he walked past me. My right eyelid suddenly twitched a few times. Fortunately, he didn't make any inappropriate moves the whole night. On the way back, Evan deliberately put on a cold look and said, "Don't overthink it." I just couldn't find anyone to act with me. His standards were really high. He always felt that this level of behavior was already a great disrespect to someone. I suddenly wanted to laugh and nodded. "Yes, yes, yes." He glanced at me, then fell silent. He dropped me off at my doorstep, watched me enter, then turned and left. Soon after, someone knocked on the door. Thinking it was Evan coming back to say something, I asked as I opened the door. "What's up?" I didn't expect to see Adrien, reeking of alcohol, standing outside. He still had half a cigarette in his hand. Seeing the smile on my face that I couldn't hide in time, he coldly remarked, "You're quite something, Claire." I instinctively tried to close the door, but he pushed his way in. He seemed almost crazy as he pulled me into his arms. "I told you, I don't agree to part ways. Why should I make way for Evan now that he's back? What makes you think I don't know? You approached me in the first place to gather information about him? Now that you've used me, you're going to kick me aside? That's not how it works. Have I treated you badly all these years? Wasn't the money I gave you enough?" Well, he had a point. As a boss, Adrien was generous, and as a boyfriend, aside from his frequent infidelity, he didn't have any other inappropriate behavior. He was unsteady from drinking too much. When I pushed him, he fell to the ground. His eyes red, he glared at me. "What Evan can give you, I can give too." I watched quietly as he ranted, then said, "How about I don't need that money anymore? You keep it." I don't lie. I told him. I want to support Evan. I'm afraid he won't have a good life. I don't want to leave him because of money. Chapter 9. My father was a common worker, my mother was unemployed. When my grandfather fell ill and needed chemotherapy, my family sold our house and land but still couldn't gather enough for the medical and post-operative expenses. We had taken out loans, but even from relatives and friends, we couldn't borrow any more money. At that time, all the money I and Evan earned was used to support my family. I mentioned breaking up several times, but he always responded coldly. So when his mother approached me later, I actually felt relieved because I felt Evan's life shouldn't be in such a mess because of me. Finally, I had a legitimate reason to let him go. After that, he disappeared without a trace, and I couldn't find him anywhere, so I had to turn to Adrien. Then, it seemed like Adrien genuinely cared for me, and Elena was my escape route. He slowly got up from the ground. "Claire, tell me, what am I to you?" I said. "If you leave now, you're my cousin. If you persist, then you're the stumbling block between Evan and me." During the 6 months I was in the hospital, Adrien came to see me. He always came when I was asleep, leaving some light meals in takeaway boxes. When I asked him, he said he brought them from outside. But I knew he made them, because takeout isn't that hard to eat. I was in pain every day, unable to sleep, so I knew everything, but I had to pretend not to know. Adrien's tears fell to the ground without warning. He wiped his eyes fiercely, turned around, and started to walk away. When he reached the door, he glanced back at me. "Claire, even you don't know, I know what you're like when you're asleep. The first time I saw you wasn't at the company." My heart ached a bit. He had always known everything I knew. But isn't love exclusive? Can you love me and casually cheat with someone else? Leaving that aside, at least he had feelings for Elena. Although I didn't know if it was because she smiled similarly to me, or if he wanted to prove or salvage something through this act of cheating. When I went to close the door, I saw Evan leaning against the railing, looking serious, lost in thought. I was surprised. "How did you get here?" His voice was low. "I was about to leave when I saw him coming, afraid that something might happen to you." So he must have heard our conversation just now. I awkwardly cleared my throat. Evan suddenly pulled me into his arms. The embrace after 4 years didn't feel strange, it was as if we were always meant to be this way. After a long while, he spoke. "Claire, you're such a wolf in sheep's clothing." But in the end, this wolf in sheep's clothing proposed to me. Chapter 10. The video of Evan's proposal went viral on social media, becoming the standard for girls to demand a proposal from their boyfriends. I'm not someone who cries easily, but in the video, I cried uncontrollably, unable to stop, as if all the grievances he had caused me were pouring out. That night, Elena messaged me on a secondary account. She said, "That bitch is getting married. Good for her, Adrien deserves it. He deserves to love her in vain, he deserves to be tormented by her, he deserves to die. Since I agreed to break up with Adrien, I hadn't replied to her messages. But she seemed not to care and treated me like a confidant. As I watched her emotions deteriorate, her words becoming more venomous every day. She said, "Adrien is mine. If he dies, he should die with me. Whoever gets close to him, I'll kill them." A few days later, she said, "Adrien hasn't come back for several days. What should I do? Teach me, I beg you. I can't be without him." I sent her one final message. When you choose to interfere in someone else's relationship, have you ever thought that what you obtained in this way, you might lose in the same way? After finishing, I logged out of the secondary account. Not long after, news of Elena stabbing someone with a knife surfaced. She had stabbed Adrien's new girlfriend and was arrested for intentional injury, reported by Adrien. I was picking out wedding favors when I saw Adrien entering through the door, whom I hadn't seen in months. He seemed thinner than before, but it was evident he was trying to get his life back on track. I heard his new girlfriend was someone he was seriously considering marrying. It seemed like someone was taking care of him, and his condition seemed better than during the time we were together. He visibly paused when he saw me, and after noticing what I was holding, the light in his eyes dimmed once again. Neither of us greeted each other. He walked past me without a glance, and as he brushed past me, a warm breeze blew in from outside, carrying the scent of spring and dispersing some intangible things. As I left, Evan was already waiting for me at the door. Sitting in the driver's seat, he held a cigarette between his slender fingers, looking somewhat melancholic. I asked him, "What's wrong with you? Why the long face?" He didn't speak, just glanced behind me. With just that look, I knew why he was upset. I couldn't help but chuckle. "Evan, come on, let go of those things. Why are you being so petty?" Evan gave me a stern look. "Get in the car." He had a stubborn personality, and I teased him on purpose. "You don't seem like the male lead, more like the second male lead who's always worried about the female lead being stolen away." It was a sunny day, the warmth of the sun shining down. The road seemed long, and I felt drowsy in the passenger seat. Just as I was about to fall asleep, something soft pressed against my lips. I opened my eyes to see Evan's thick lashes and handsome features. As the kiss ended, he playfully bit my lip and then grunted. "Are you sure I'm the second male lead?" "I'm clearly the male lead who has returned, and this time, I'm going to reclaim everything that belongs to me."